Spider-Man is not a superhero. He wears a costume to hide his identity, catches criminals, saves kids, fights supervillains, but even so, Spider-Man is not a superhero. And I am not talking about the stoned Turkish Spider-Man waving a shiv. I am talking about the classic version of him, and Sam Raimi's adaptation being the closest one to the original. Before 2002, no one really understood how to transfer comic books to the screen. It was always roulette. Sometimes good movies were made. Sometimes we got George Clooney with rubber nipples and Schwarzenegger cosplayer. Nobody took comic books seriously, so exactly the Tobey Maguire movie was able to hit the jackpot and get studios really interested in movie adaptations. It was the 2002 Spider-Man that made the general public pay attention to superheroes, despite the fact that Spider-Man himself never was one. Today we will talk about how the character named Peter Parker was born, how he paved the way for modern superheroes, and how he died ingloriously to the cheers of the crowd. The appearance of each superhero reflects a certain stage of modern history and responds to the needs of the people of the time. Superheroes appeared in the early 40s, and Captain America became the most popular of them on the wave of nationalist propaganda and the surge of patriotism. On the cover of a magazine, he was punching in the face someone who must not be named. But once World War II was over, Steve Rogers was trashed. No one wanted to read about soldiers and warfare anymore. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched the first satellite, which flew in orbit and scared American citizens. Popularity comes to Green Lantern that protects humanity from space. The era of technological progress arrived, and here came Flash, fast and bright. In 1956, a new Flash named Barry Allen appears in Showcase number 4. Before that, Flash was Jay Garrick, who appeared in 1940. A full restart took place in 1959. It was Barry Allen who gained real popularity as he met the needs of that time. He was a scientist and wore a suit in the colors of mid-50s premium cars. The Flash marked the silver age of superheroes, revitalizing the genre. Curiously, Barry Allen took the made-up name Flash from a comic book he was reading inside the comic book about him. The multi-universe was just in its infancy at the time. Then there is the incredible boom of superheroics, fundamentally changing the genre. The Fantastic Four comes out. Their characters bicker, face routines, and generally talk like normal people. They do not say cliches one by one. In Origins of Marvel Comics book, Stan Lee wrote the following: "For just this once, I would do the type of story I myself would enjoy reading if I were a comic book reader. And the characters would be the kind of characters I could personally relate to. They'd be flesh and blood. They'd have their faults and foibles. They'd be fallible and feisty. And most important of all, inside their colorful costumed booties, they'd still have feet of clay." The more I thought about it, the more the concept grabbed me. Realism in comics suddenly became popular. The Fantastic Four makes a blast, and Stan Lee gets the idea for a new character based on a fly that buzzes around and crawls on walls. Marvel is releasing Spider-Man. In the creation of this hero, Stan Lee used a completely new approach, incredibly simple and yet ingenious. Since comic books are so much spread among teenagers, it is necessary to make a teenager hero. The one with personal problems, though. It is just amazing that for 20 years of the genre's existence, no one has thought of this, especially in the 40s when 90% of kids read comics. Before Spider-Man, teens were just sidekicks to main characters like Robin. When Stan Lee brought the Spider idea to Martin Goodman, head of Marvel Comics, he said it was the worst idea he had ever heard.
"Stan, that is the worst idea I have ever heard. First of all, people hate spiders, so you can't call a hero Spider-Man. You want him to be a teenager? Teenagers can only be sidekicks. And you want him to have personal problems? Dan, don't you know what a superhero is? They don't have personal problems."
Spidey had to be placed in the last issue of a magazine in order to test the reaction of the audience.
When you do the last issue of a magazine, nobody cares what you put in it because the book is dying.
It worked, though. Out of all the characters, Peter Parker was the most humane. He went to school, worked as a part-time photographer, paid rent for a small room, and took care of his aunt. He acted like a normal person while trying to combine his ordinary life with superhero activities.
My publisher came racing into my office. Stan, you remember that character we both loved so much, Spider-Man? Let's do him as a series.
When Sam Raimi took on the comic book adaptation, he decided to make the character as realistic as possible.
Sometimes in the comic book movies, they take a step back from reality, even when dealing with the characters. But I decided to take a different approach and make it as real as possible so that the audience believed that they could believe in this hero, in this man.
For the same reason, Raimi didn't give Tobey web shooters. He decided that a high school student would not have been able to invent such a device. Spider-Man is the most popular superhero in the world because he is exactly like us, common people. He is not a superhero. This character was born at the crossroads of genres, in between superheroics and drama. His conflict lacks epics. He's very personal, subjective, directed inward. That is why Raimi decided to go not from the side of superpowers and classic heroic attributes, but from the side of drama and personal conflict. It is something that is familiar to all of us. The first thing we hear in the movie is the question,
"Who am I?"
In the second part, this conflict is taken to a new level, and Raimi emphasizes it with this shot with two costumes. Peter can't make a choice. He knows nothing about himself. Who is he? Is he Spider-Man or just a guy? Whom he wants to be? Where does his life go? Will he succeed with Mary Jane? Will he become a great scientist where his newfound power will take him? And will it be a bright path?
Gonna make you mad not to know who you are.
Doubts plague every sane person. Peter comes to the doctor to help him understand himself. He is full of anger and hatred, contradictory thoughts.
Who are you?
I don't know.
He makes a lot of mistakes. It cannot be said that he is an exceptionally positive character. If we look at the first movie, Peter doesn't save the world like a classic superhero, but he tries to get money in order to impress a girl. He argues with his uncle.
And I know I'm not your father.
Then stop pretending to be.
He takes revenge on his enemies.
Now he's gonna get away with my money.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
His archenemy is not a supervillain casting fireballs, but it is his best friend's father. The first movie was originally planned to add Venom, but Raimi decided to replace him with Green Goblin to show the conflict between fathers and sons. The more personal story was meant to add even more realism to the picture. The father despises Harry, but loves Peter at the same time.
Harry tells me you're quite the science whiz. You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
He doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah, not if you're a genius. I think he wants to adopt you.
I respect that. You want to make it on your own steam. That's great.
You took him from me. He loved me.
No, he despised you. You were an embarrassment to him.
And if you ever need anything, just give me a call.
Raimi creates down-to-earth conflicts. His characters are not simply black and white, and they have many edges of undertones. Norman Osborn was not a bad person. His personality was as split just as Peter's. Otto Octavius was not completely evil either. He was trying to give humanity a source of boundless energy.
Intelligence is not a privilege, it's a gift. And you use it for the good of mankind.
Flint Marko was trying to get money for his dying daughter's surgery, and every one of them get Peter's judgment. He attacks every single of them with fury. He sees no undertones and engages in every fight because he remembers what happens if you stand aside and just think that it is not your problem.
Hey kid, little help?
Not my policy.
Just thinking that he has killed Flint, Peter happily reports it to Aunt May, but she is averse to any violence.
I don't understand. Spider-Man doesn't kill people.
Before the Spidey adaptation, Sam Raimi has dabbled in horror movies, so now he brings horror elements to the superhero drama. When Peter sets out to kill a mugger, there is nothing but pure hatred in this scene. It is one of the most powerful scenes in the entire Marvel Universe. We hear Peter's muffled screams. We see medium and close-up shots instead of the wide ones. The subjective shots feel claustrophobic and crushingly angry, just the opposite of the free-flying, web-swinging shots. Minimal computer effects and maximum practical ones. Peter chases a robber in a darkened room. He chases him like a beast, smashes the glass with his head, and nearly throws him out of the window. This single revenge killing feels 10 times more powerful than the billions of people wiped out by the Snap in Infinity War, because this personal conflict means everything for Peter.
What does it matter to you anyway? Everything!
I don't sympathize with the Avengers' problems. I don't understand them. I don't know what this universal conflict means, as well as battle with aliens and sorcerers from the parallel past. All of that doesn't touch me. But I am moved by the conflict of the teenager who suddenly gets an immense power. I really wonder where he is going to channel it. Peter is not a superhero. He is not into saving the world, but he is chasing his uncle's killer and takes brutal revenge on him. He gets into all kinds of fights because he has already ignored one of them once, and it broke him. I do believe in Peter Parker's problems, especially in Peter played by Tobey and directed by Sam Raimi. He has no money. He is not some handsome eye candy boy, and he is not respected at school. He doesn't have $1 million suit donated by Iron Man, and he doesn't get the girl right at the beginning of the movie. Tobey is the only one out of all 3 spiders who shows us the real loser. While he is Peter Parker, he is a loser, and only by putting on the suit he can become brave, witty, and confident. Holland even had to be given a chubby nerd friend, since the actor doesn't look like a geek at all. This is the main difference between Tobey's Spidey and the ones impersonated by Garfield and Holland. When he takes off his costume, he becomes Peter Parker, and not just Spider-Man without the costume. Tobey Maguire's Spidey was a total loser. He was bullied by the whole school. He excels academically, but his social skills are below par. Garfield's Spidey is not bullied by the whole class, but by just one bully named Flash. Not too much though. Holland is just an absolutely cool guy, and Flash only makes a couple of harmless jokes about him. For me, Aunt May's $20 gifted to Peter means a lot more than a multi-million-dollar suit from Tony Stark, because that is pretty much all they have.
No, I can't take that.
Yes, you can. You can take this money from me. For God's sake, it's not much. Now take it, and don't you dare leave it here.
Aunt May is very poor. She has been evicted from her home, so it is a small but priceless gesture.
All I got is this 20 to the rest of the week.
Sorry, doesn't pay the rent.
To billionaire Stark, that suit is worth nothing. His inventions break and explode by hundreds. It devalues the significance of the gesture. I don't care because he doesn't care. While Tony Stark, playboy billionaire philanthropist, is an idol for Holland's Spidey. For Tobey's Spidey, Octavius is an idol. He is just a charming nerd and he has a beautiful, loving wife. When Peter has dinner with them, he realizes what he wants: a quiet life with Mary Jane, and an office at the university. The superhero costume brings him nothing but pain and suffering. It is a huge wound that cannot heal. Peter loses his abilities and cannot climb walls because this movie is not about a superhero, but about a man who cannot let go of the past and forgive himself. Peter Parker doesn't want to be Spider-Man, especially Tobey Maguire's Peter. As Stan Lee said, behind his costume, a strength is not primary, but a weakness. Peter is just a nerd, and his nerdiness is best demonstrated in this scene. Yes, we will separately touch on the most magnificent scene of the entire movie. It caused quite a bit of confusion back in the day. Everyone said it was just too much of a cringe, but this is exactly the way it was meant to be. The symbiote inside Peter makes him feel confident. The goofy walk and dance is how Peter imagines being cool, since he is a nerd, and in his head it looks really cool.
There's a geek flair to it, but you actually have some good moves.
Well, thank you, sir. The geek flair was not an accident.
Oh my God.
Had to add that. That was the toughest part of the whole thing. Sam actually kept saying, you gotta bring the cool down.
No. I remember that part.
Oh, you don't remember that, Sam?
You are such a nerd.
Many scold the trilogy for repeatedly repeating the damsel in distress cliché. The Goblin attacks Aunt May, then kidnaps Mary Jane. Octavius also attacks Aunt May, then kidnaps Mary Jane. And what does Venom do?
Where to?
That's the style of a great horror movie buff. Raimi loves sharp zooms and screaming women much more than anyone else. The best way to evoke fear in a viewer is to show the horror on a character's face in close-up. It was the author's perspective that allowed the early Marvel movies to be something more than just a part of the universe. They were self-contained. They were the ones that captivated audiences in their times. There are a dozen of scenes in Raimi's trilogy that feel like they are from the horror movies. Peter's transformation, Harry and his father's laughter, Harry and Octavius, Norman in front of the mirror,
Performance enhancers. Bingo. Me.
Norman with the mask,
Tell me how!
The heart, Osborne.
or Goblin pretending to be an old lady.
Jungle out there. I had to beat an old lady with a stick to get these cranberries.
Especially the scene with Octavius in the hospital. 3 minutes of pure horror. Christopher Nolan's Batman and the first Iron Man were also the last author's motion pictures in the superheroics genre before the studios finally set rigid standards. It was already felt by the end of the Tobey's trilogy. There should have been no Venom in it, just Sandman. Venom was just hastily added to the script to start blowing up the universe and getting people used to crossovers and character interplay. Sam Raimi just wasn't allowed to make the third Spidey movie the way he wanted, and his ideas for the fourth installment were simply rejected and he quit. He brought Peter Parker to the screen the way Stan Lee once envisioned him, a guy with personal problems who cannot decide his place in the world.
Am I not supposed to have what I want? What I need? What am I supposed to do?
But the studio squeezed him out and threw away. Then the same thing happened to Garfield's Spidey. So now we are watching Holland's Spidey getting squeezed out as well. He is not the last Spidey on the screen. Raimi once said that people are interested in stories about people.
What people are really interested in is the story of people.
Now there is less and less screen space for people, and more timing are taken up by flashy, epic action sequences. The degree of epic is growing. Parallel worlds, time travel, mass genocide of the universe. After all that, the studio just cannot afford a little personal story about a little man. Spider-Man paved the way to big movies for all the superheroes, and then simply got squeezed and trashed. I'm not trying to cast stones at Tom Holland's Spidey. I like his way of playing Spidey. Just all I'm saying is that this is a totally different Spidey. This Spidey is an actual superhero, like Thor or Captain America. I don't know if that is a good thing or a bad. I'm just sad that we probably won't see the same ordinary plain down-to-earth Spidey anymore. Not a superhero Spidey, not an Avenger Spidey, but the Spider-Man that was once created by Stan Lee, who looks just like us, made of flesh and blood. The Spidey with his own rats in the attic and trivial household problems such as a faulty door.
Listen, it's a free country. It's not rent-free country.
Leave me alone.
Give me rent.
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
That wasn't cool.
He is a good boy. He must be in some kind of trouble.